I think this week a little bit of everything. Hello, my name's Gavin. This is Genre Books, and this is the 15th bookshelf exploration excavation. We will now be 2/3 of the way through the main shelf. I'm not counting the ones that are stacked on top of the shelf. We'll get to those at the end. But we've got a few to get through today, so let's crack on. Starting with Nathaniel Hawthorne, The Blithedale Romance. I remember liking this. Don't remember all the details about it, but it is basically a utopian community in America. So it's sort of a model community being built from the ground up and how it all goes wrong. Epic Continent from Nicholas Jubber. So telling the story of stories, or telling the story of Europe through stories, but looking at Beowulf, the Odyssey, the Nibelungenlied, the Kosovo Cycle, the Song of Roland, going through, quite a few. Well, he's got epic there because it's mostly epic poetry, but it's a sort of telling of stories through Europe, or telling of Europe through stories. Don DeLillo, Great Jones Street. Late 60s Marxism and psychoanalysis from Jacques Derrida, Positions. Adam Ferguson's telling of hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic, When Money Dies. Frederick Copleston's A History of Philosophy. This is Volume 2, from St. Augustine to Duns Scotus. I Married a Communist, from Philip Roth. A couple of Peter Ackroyd books, The History of England, Volume 1, Foundation. And London, the Biography. And I'm feeling, yes, this one is signed. And it's the return of what everyone has been hankering for. Reference books. The Dictionary of Philosophy. And the Dictionary of Critical Theory. A couple of books on myths and legends. We have China and Japan from Donald A. Mackenzie. And The Middle Ages from H.A. Gerber. And a book it's been 20 odd years since I've read, one I want to get to reread again, because apart from anything else, it's talking about Prester John, which is something I want to be looking at a little bit in the coming year, and that is Umberto Eco Boldolino. So, sticking with the Middle Ages, this is about our hero gets adopted by Barbarossa, and it's his adventures. Groucho Marx, Groucho and Me, the autobiography. A couple of horror books now, both by James Herbert. Sepulchre and The Dark. I'm not sure I've actually read this one. I might have to give it a go. Anyone who's been watching many of my videos will be bored of me mentioning this guy, but White Sands, Experiences from the Outside World, from Jeff Dyer. Next up is The Marble Faun by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So I think this must be one of the earliest examples in American literature of the author talking about their travels around Europe and an American view of Europe. 3 people on the Grand Tour in Italy, and they come into contact with a local, Donatello, and I'm not giving the plot away. Another James Herbert, one I definitely have read, so Domain. This is the 3rd and I think final of his Rats books. Never Let Me Go from Kazuo Ishiguro. I have only read the first volume of The Wheel of Time. Here is volume 2, and yes, it's suitably doorstoppish, and has one of those bugbears of mine, a sticker that is not a sticker. You can't erase it. Amazon is everywhere. The Collected Ghost Stories of M.R. James, Eugene Ionesco, Rhinoceros. Someone who can give Robert Jordan a run for their money in the Page Stakes, Peter F. Hamilton, The Evolutionary Void. Someone who doesn't write science fiction or fantasy, but no slouch in the page department herself, is Hilary Mantel. I've got Wolf Hall on the shelves here somewhere, but here are the sequels: Bringing Up the Bodies and Mirror and the Light. A book which I'm definitely reading next year is Lionel Davidson's The Rose of Tibet. Anthony Pole's From a View to a Death. Colin Wilson's The Philosopher's Stone. A while back on one of these, in fact you can see it's just there, I showed you 40 Signs of Rain from Kim Stanley Robinson. I did not realise until I saw these two books in a bookshelf that it was part of a trilogy, but here we have 50 Degrees Below and 60 Days and Counting. Western Time Now and J.T. Edson, The Hard Riders. And William Chamberlain's The Trumpets of Company K. The Sabre Squadron from Simon Raven. And the first two books of the Dumarest saga from E.C. Tubb. So we have The Winds of Gath and Derai. So I think this again is books I didn't get to during Garb August or Rocket Summer. That included Murray Leinster's Operation Terror. Unfortunately, a torn cover. The sequel to When Worlds Collide from Edwin Bulmer and from Philip Wiley is After Worlds Collide. This next book appears in Appendix N, which is a list compiled by Gary Gygax detailing books that had an influence on and books that might be considered good background reading for any player of Dungeons and Dragons. That is Hero's Journey from Sterling E. Lanier. And a book which is definitely on Appendix N, Tolkien, The Return of the King. More westerns, more J.T. Edson, The Rebel Spy, sequel to, or part of the same series of a book that I read this last year for June on the Range. Jubal Cade, this is number 8, Death Wears Grey. One which is on my list for next Rocket Summer. I read the first of the Skylark series, The Skylark of Space from E.E. Dog Smith for this last Rocket Summer. The second in the Skylark series is, confusingly, Skylark 3. They hadn't quite figured out a space opera series at this early stage of development. And a novel from Christopher Priest, and I think maybe his first novel, Indoctrinaire. A book I dipped into for June on the Range, and that was The Best Western Stories. And this includes stories from Francis Brett Hart, Stephen Crane, O. Henry, Jack London, Zane Grey, Frank C. Robertson, Will Jenkins, Henry Sinclair, Drago, George Bridges Rodney, Max Brand, D.M. Johnson, John O'Reilly, T.V. Olson and Jack Schaefer. Another couple that I didn't get round to for Rocket Summer, Wild Harbour by Ian McPherson, and R.C. Sheriff, The Hopkins Manuscript. And finally today, what looks like must be an old American textbook. This is American Writers. So it is selections, gobbets from a American writers, oddly enough. But it's got pretty much everyone in here. So everything from the English and the colonial period up until what was presumably the very modern Ogden Nash. So I think it's pretty straight-laced. There is nothing contentious. There is nothing so sullied as westerns here, because what would the frontier have anything to do with the development of American literature? It does have, it's got Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address, which actually comes 30 pages after the death of Lincoln, according to this, so that's interesting. Here you go. It does acknowledge that some kind of genre here. It has The Mask of the Red Death from Edgar Allan Poe. It's even got some of... well, okay, I'll take it. I'll take some of this back. It's actually got some of Poe's poetry as well. Yes, this has pieces from Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, but what they've chosen is A Boy's Plans for Self-Improvement, and then there's lots of poetry and speeches, including A Conservative from Charlotte Gilman. There you go, just a random page I've opened it up at. Well, if I wasn't on a swivel chair, I might be climbing up now and saying, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." But we'll leave it there. That's the end of this shelf. So until next week, bye.